Hello and welcome to our second session of the day, our panel looking at business change. And welcome back to those of you who were with us just before for the business change presentation. So just before we get started, to make sure that the sound is working, will people be able to click the raise hand button, just so I can make sure that people are able to hear us. Okay. Okay, I'm not actually getting any raised hands this time. There we go. Okay, great. So people are able to hear us. Last thing I'll say then, before introducing our moderator, is to submit questions as we go throughout the panel. You'll be able to submit questions through the questions tab. I think on the Brella app it looks like a speech bubble with a question mark on it. So if you click that, you'll be able to submit your questions, and we'll come to those questions at the Q&A at the end. Now I will hand over to Leonardo Uehara, who's the Managing Director of the Strategy Implementation Consultancy Visagio. Prior to founding Visagio, I worked on several projects at Shell's a renowned international consultancy, and led the international production at PSA Peugeot Citroën. Leonardo is also previously the UK President of the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. Leonardo, I will hand over to you then.
Thanks very much, Charles, and good afternoon, or good morning, good evening for everyone, wherever you are joining us today. First and foremost, I hope you are all healthy and safe. Just recalling, remind everyone on Charles, we have today 1 hour, a bit less than an hour, and I will try to reserve the last 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes for Q&A. So please do submit your questions in the chat bar that you have on your screen. Before we start, I'd like to introduce James and Kaveh. James Elgenes is the leading advisor for digitalization within Equinor exploration. He's a geophysicist by background and has worked within exploration, field development, production, and software development with 10 years of industry experience. James nowadays is responsible for digital strategy and accelerating digitalization within the company. And that means integrating, utilizing data, digital technology, and also new ways of working. And Kaveh, who also joined us today in this panel, is the CIO of Neptune Energy. He joined the company since March 2019. And prior to that, Kaveh has also held several positions as CIO, including CIO of Seadrill, of Global Refined International Business for BP, and BOC Edwards. And preceding CIO roles, Kaveh was on the other side. He was in management consulting as a member of the board for KPMG Consulting in the UK, and before its acquisition by Atos Origin, where he also became a managing director. So I would like to welcome you both, Kaveh and James, for today's session on digital transformation. And I think it's a big topic, and we have a lot to cover in less than an hour. So I'd like to maybe start with an initial question. What does, first of all, digital transformation mean to you and to your business? When people are thinking of, oh, we want to start a digital transformation, what do you actually mean for that? So, and everybody has a different meaning. So I'll start maybe with James.
Yeah, sure. And hello, everyone. Good to be here today. I think it's a very good question, and I guess whoever you ask will probably answer it in a slightly different way. So in my organization, in exploration, Equinor, we talk about digital transformation being about sort of transforming the interaction between people, data, and technology to deliver on the business strategy. So that's important. And because I work in exploration, and therefore it's really about identifying new opportunities to create value for Equinor through oil and gas discoveries. So we want to actually fill our portfolio with more business opportunities, make sure that we increase the flow of information through the value chain, and hopefully at the other end of it, we're going to discover more oil and gas and create value. But in terms of delivering on that ambition through digitalization, we actually see that we have sort of two types of digital activity. The first type there is activities that do aim for that short-term value creation. And this happens in high energy and agile teams that are trying to augment data science and geoscience together. So these teams are very focused on experimenting and innovating using data and technology, again, to deliver on the needs of the business. And then you really have a sort of maybe a longer term type approach to digitalization, and this is about scalable, sustainable solutions in the cloud, liberating data, the open subsurface data universe, and these types of things. And these are longer term sort of initiatives, but they will pay off eventually. But so far, we're probably only scratching the surface in terms of the value from that type of activity. So yeah, I think I'll leave it like that.
Yeah, thanks, James. I'd like to bring Kaveh to the discussion. Kaveh, maybe share some of your thoughts of how do you define digital transformation in your context?
Thank you, Leonardo. First of all, hello everyone. I hope you're all well, and wherever you are dialing from are safe and sound. To answer the question, I think maybe I introduce Neptune Energy for some of your listeners, and they may not be familiar who Neptune Energy is. It's a relatively newcomer. It's an exploration and production company. It is operating internationally in Europe, North Africa, and Asia Pacific. And the portfolio of it is quite a lot of gas. It's gas centric, and obviously it's been only a few years that it's been formed. So if you think about what digital transformation is in our context, is about enabling the business outcomes we're looking for. The business outcomes of being a safe, responsible organization that can grow sustainably also. And with that in mind, we started our digital transformation back in March 2019. And we kind of basically defined what are the outcomes we are looking for. And as I said, it's about how do we kind of find hydrocarbons more safely, more efficiently, with more certainty. How do we make sure that our assets are running more reliably, more safely, more efficiently? And how do we make sure that the integrated value chain of Neptune, how it works with its partners, with its suppliers, and how its people, our employees, are working. They have the right tools, they have the right processes that they are following, so that collectively the whole integrated value chain works well. So digital transformation for us is the entirety of how we're operating. And of course, it is about how do we become effectively using the technology safer, better, and faster. What it is not, but digital transformation is not about just technology delivery. It is about, and certainly it's not about just delivering a proof of concept or a pilot. It is about actually the outcomes that the business gets enabled through technology. So I leave it with that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kaveh, for your I like the point you make about is a new way of operating the business, which not only results on production, but also it involves all the partners in the business, not only your company, but also suppliers, your technology partners, and so on. Before digressing too much on the semantic and what does it mean, we're going to come back a little bit more with some examples. I just want to move on to, for someone who is in this conference now, listen to us, listen to you, and they're thinking about starting a digital transformation initiative, either a program or maybe a case. How in your experience, you ignited that within your own organization? How did you manage to mobilize? Was it already there when you came in and joined the company, or was it something that you helped to actually ignite in the organization? Maybe start with you this time, Kaveh.
Thank you. So I think in that context, when we started the program, it was about, as I mentioned, the business outcomes that the business was looking for. How do we become a safer organization? How do we become more efficient? How do we have a platform for growing the business sustainably and be a responsible organization? So, and of course, there are goals and objectives that we have within that. The first step that we undertook was really to start defining what digitization means in our context and putting a strategy, a digitization strategy piece together. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with that strategy, we needed to get the board, the executive team on board, the management teams on board, and of course, communicate it as wide as we can with the organization. But that's just one piece. The strategy is just, is one piece of the whole thing. Then the next thing is about, starting to deliver against those strategies and starting to deliver those things with, whilst the strategy is the big picture, paints the big picture, and it's several years of a journey. Then we needed to kind of define what are the short-term things that we can deliver, so that you start basically making it, real. It becomes real basically, and you're starting to change for the better, of course, the lives of our users and our organization. So when they start seeing things happening, then that's where you start getting commitment at all levels of organization. And of course, those commitments and support, doesn't come right out at the beginning. Not everybody, you say, oh, we do digitization, and everybody goes and says, what a great idea. Mm-hmm. It's about basically, paint the picture, but then you build a track record by delivering things and demonstrating that actually these things are able to deliver value, are able to make, as I said, improve the ways of working. Mm. And one of the very first things we had to do as part of this digital transformation strategy was to get the operating model of IT right. How we work basically with our businesses, how we engage with our businesses, which is effectively is the funnel for all the ideas, all the requirements, all the needs. And that's, to me, the business element, understanding and having the right engagement with the business is really crucial in any kind of digital transformation, because that's the point that's the touch point of your digitization on the business. And then at the back end, you've got to make sure that you have the right capabilities to be able to deliver that. And then within those capabilities that your operating model defines, some are in-house capabilities. One needed to be very clear on what capabilities you need to have internally, and what partners do you put in place that support you and complements that capabilities with you. Again, getting that IT operating model is a core enabler of the digital transformation, of any digital transformation, that you've got to be very clear on that. And that often requires change. And we obviously needed to change by introducing that operating model. We had to also accept that we have to do change. And that's where you need the executive team and the support of the management, that with any digital transformation, change is likely to happen. And you need the support of that team to enable you to make change. If you don't change anything, then it could be, the impact could be very minimal in terms of what you're investing in and the efforts that you're putting into this area.
Yeah. No, thanks, Kaveh. And I think your point, of many elements you pointed out in igniting the change, and you started from strategy, the board support, the IT program behind that, and also obviously the resources, capability, internal capability. I want to now relate to James. How has it been in your case at Equinor? Do you relate to the same kind of approach where how does digital transformation support the overall strategy and the output the business wants, and assessing the current capabilities and having the overall support and joining that with the assets, the businesses that will carry this forward? Or has it been different in your case?
No, exactly the same in terms of, you need to deliver on the business strategy. That's the key. And I think the journey in Equinor started around 5 years ago with digitalization, and we had a digital center of excellence set up that set the direction for digital transformation, and really that focused on setting the foundations, a subsurface data lake, making sure that we can test technology, that we have an area that can help to build competence in the rest of the organization, and then embedding in the new competencies that we were seeing, data scientists, cloud architects. But I can comment on that question from my perspective, again, in exploration. So even though a few elements that enable digital transformation can be centralized, you need those changes to happen where the value is created. It's really important to have business-led digitalization activities. I think we were quite lucky and quite early on in exploration, using machine learning and advanced analytics. So we had an example called missed pay, where we wanted to screen thousands of wells at a time, and it led to new insights and opportunities, but more importantly, it actually led to creating some sort of enthusiasm and motivation, and built competence with people. It finally put it on the map, and as you said, Kaveh, it made it real. And it's something really important to note here as well, is that strong leadership support, and I think we've had that in our organization. I think within exploration, you need to try and think a little bit differently and more creatively to be competitive. You need to take some risks. And our former EVP, Tim Dodson, he would constantly make digitalization a top priority. And some people believed it was just hype, and some people actually still do believe it's still hype. But it really helped to empower certain people to deliver on his compelling vision. And it meant that we didn't have so many roadblocks and bottlenecks in place. And that's another a real key success factor for digitalization, is being able to quickly scale up projects that have transformational potential. So when you get these quick wins, which is really important, as I said, you can then set up sort of dedicated teams to actually work on this full time. So we went from 2 people to 8 people, and now we've got 25 people working in sort of these agile teams I mentioned earlier. It almost feels like a startup culture, but within a massive organization. But then, at the same time, you need to ensure that you really do undertake solid communication to the rest of the organization, try and ignite the interest, enthusiasm, and perhaps incentivize a few more people to join the teams and build their competence. And as I said, 5 years ago, right, I think now we're at an actual tipping point where digitalization has gone beyond just a few sort of key enthusiastic individuals in a fringe activity to something that's a lot more substantial and recognized. And it really did take these quick wins, this leadership support, the compelling vision to really create and sustain that momentum that we've got.
Very good.
Yeah. If I may just add one more thing here also. I think, some of the digitization initiatives that we all get excited about, and our businesses get excited about, whether it's artificial intelligence, augmented reality, all of machine learning, all of these things that get excited, they won't get any traction if you don't get the basics right also. So before you start any kind of a digital transformation, in fact, your digital transformation may also need to address some of the immediate pain points that the organization may feel. I have worked with small organizations, big organizations, medium-sized organizations. There's always something that's gets the user is not very happy. It may be your help desk, it may be your laptop, it may be the Wi-Fi. The basics have to be addressed before you're able to talk strategy. So before your audience start basically putting a digitalization strategy put in place, they really have to make sure that the basics are in place before you can actually talk about innovation and the differentiation.
Very good. It seems that in both of your cases, being very much centrally driven or initiated by the center, but you have actually involved a lot the operations, the assets, for them to be the owners of the change. How though do you manage to coordinate that? I think you mentioned a lot about new technologies and internal capability, but how much knowledge you have to have in the beginning to start that initiative, and how much external knowledge you had to either purchase or bring skills to allow this to be sustained and even initiated? Maybe let's start with you, James.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think what you really need early on, you do need some time to start actually playing around with things and trying things out. Actually, we didn't actually make a digital strategy until only 2 years ago, so I don't think we had the competence or the experience to do it. It took us a while to really understand and learn from experiences, success cases, failures, actually what to do. And then you reach a situation where you feel actually, we need to get a grip on things. We need to start really putting into place some governance, and that doesn't mean bureaucracy. It just means that you need to ruthlessly start to prioritize, which are the actual activities that are going to create the most value long term. And you need to find a way of actually systematically capturing business needs. If you don't understand the real problem that you're going to solve, then you shouldn't be sort of looking into solving things. But I think that the key thing as well is when you're starting digital transformation, actually to dedicate and allocate people that are some of your best people to put on it. Change is hard, so if you just leave it to technologists to start running these things, then I think it's a bit of a recipe for failure. You need to embed business people into the digital activities along with the technologists to really drive things forward.
Very good. And James, were the solutions coming from the business people on the ground and the assets, or was it pretty much driven centrally? It seems that it was a balance of almost between a big organization and startup, where you allowed innovation also to pop up. How did it actually work?
Yeah, like we actually use design thinking quite a lot in our activities. Okay. I think things like that are important. Actually using professional designers to go and interview people in the business. There's people that have professionals in this domain, so they can capture the business needs. And it's back to the famous quote, if you ask people back in the 1900s what they want, they would ask for faster horses rather than a car. So, but the key thing is still to listen to the needs and then think about, actually what can solve those needs, whether it's something that exists already or something that you need to think outside the box. But that sort of, I guess that user-centric approach is really key for defining problems.
Right, and just to explore a bit more on this point, James, was there a particular structure Equinor put in place to allow that external lateral thinking, or was it basically the people who are already there in the business start thinking in different ways on how they can embed digital technologies to do the same thing as they were doing, but in a different way?
Yeah, well, it got to the point where we actually had 200 ideas that had bubbled up from within the organization. But I'll tell you, nearly half of those came from a digital competition that we ran internally. So we actually crowdsourced ideas from across the organization, and that was a way of actually getting people really engaged in it. So they had to really start to think about it and get their ideas down on paper. Some of them weren't feasible at all, but still it's capturing what the organization actually needs. So that things like that are really important. You know, like how can you think a little bit differently about capturing ideas? You know, this open innovation approach, crowdsourcing, etc., hackathons, that sort of thing. We've done a lot of.
Very good. And Kaveh, what about your experience? Have you also put a structure in place, or have you organized those kind of engagements internally and competitions to bring innovation up?
You know, Leonardo, first, I think of course, the structures and the processes is what I call the IT operating model, or digital operating model. That has to be very, very clearly defined, how you intend to connect basically your business to the external capabilities.
Yep.
And I'm a great believer that you have to have sufficient in-house capabilities to know what you're doing, and don't outsource what you're trying to do to others. So if somebody basically comes up, often basically the very first things whenever I join an organization, I do the IT strategy or digitization strategy with the team themselves, with the team that we have internally. And they often tell me, well, why don't we just bring consultants to do that? Typically, we've been bringing consultants to do digitization strategies.
Yep.
And I think consultants do a great job, but there is not really a great deal of ownership when these documents go out there. And that's why I think there needs to be enough understanding, capabilities, capacities in the organization to define what they need to do, the organization needs to do. In our case, it was defining our strategy. Then, of course, having the operating model that for us, it was to make sure that we have what we call our IT client services teams that have got alignment basically with our businesses, and they have business engagement forums to understand their requirements, their needs, to capture the ideas, their innovation ideas, and many ideas actually gets generated with the business actually. And then through these processes, you bring these in terms of prioritizing them, putting seed investments, putting support behind it. On the other end, I think having a trusted set of partners, external partners that you can work with, that augment your capacities and capabilities. And one practical thing we put in place since again the start of our digital transformation is we have CIO town halls with all of our employees and our suppliers that are dedicated to our account. And in that, we share basically upfront what our strategies are, how we're progressing on our strategy, what are our issues, what are our opportunities. And it's immediately after those town halls that it spurs with new ideas. Our partners come back and say, oh, we heard about this particular opportunity you discussed. Let us talk to you about this. So you're starting to align innovation. I like to call it a focus innovation rather than scattergun innovation, because we don't have the resources, the capacities, like a big organization that can do, open source innovation. We have to be very focused on innovation and pick up the things that we can really execute to fruition. And I often say, proof of concepts is good, but it's not, if it doesn't go anywhere, we've kind of lost momentum or lost resources, or hasn't been successful, the project hasn't been successful. If you can kind of get the pilot to either you learn from it to do something differently, or you actually get it into full deployment, then that's a success to me.
Very good, very good. So we discussed a little bit about the meaning of digital transformation in your context and how to ignite it. But for those who are in the call and have already initiated digital transformation, but they are struggling actually, there are many great ideas that are coming out from our conversation to sustain that. Yeah, so the townhouse, the hackathons, and so on, and early cases of success, and to share the outcomes to get those beliefs in. But are there, if someone is already in there is struggling, not with sponsorship but more ownership in the business, are there anything that would be done, you'd have done differently, that in your experience, and what has been crucial so far to keep the momentum? Because at some point get tiring, right? Everybody might say, oh, again and again, more production, lower costs, more efficiency. So how do we ensure that it doesn't get rusty, doesn't get too tiring for everyone? Maybe start with you, James.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think ultimately it comes down to, you need to capture needs and you need to deliver results. And if you keep delivering results, then you're going to keep the momentum alive and incentivize others to take part in the journey. As I mentioned, like, again, from an exploration perspective, we are operating and working all over the world. It's Norway, it's Brazil and US GOM and Angola, etc. So it's simply put, we need to understand what the big challenges are in these areas and try to solve those challenges. And if we can show that by using digital technologies and new ways of using data, we can solve existing problems, and then you're going to keep that momentum alive. And we're in a situation now, for years and years we've been working pretty similarly, and we haven't had very good access to data. A lot of silos, as has always been said, lack of data integration, data quality issues. But now we have the capabilities to fix these things. We actually can solve these challenges, and it's almost an absolute no-brainer that these are things that can really get us accelerating forward and move the needle forward much quicker. But we need to carry on delivering on these things, or else there's no point in doing it. And
are you able to measure how much the digital transformation program has brought to the business? Are you able somehow to give us an example of what kind of success this has brought to the company?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate sign of success in exploration is that you drill a well that was, that involves some sort of new way of working analytics. But we don't see it in that way. We see that having better access to data and data integration will lead to new insights. But it's never sort of direct. Well, here's a brand new prospect. It's maybe we increase our understanding in an area, we can high grade a little bit better. And we have quite a few examples of this now, where maybe 3 years ago we couldn't have come to this sort of understanding, but now we can, because we've delivered these data into these places at this time, embedded our experts with data scientists to come up with some new understanding. And of course, it's the question about value creation is probably harder in exploration compared to maybe reducing capex and opex, improving efficiencies in other parts of the business. But in exploration, it's about the value creation, and that's a little bit harder to measure. But as I said at the start, if we fill our portfolio full of opportunities, then at the other end of the portfolio, we should get better prospects out the other side.
Yeah. So in a way, you already embedded that in the business, so it's very difficult to dissect. But actually, you are executing the same business, but with new ways of operating it.
Just as a quick example, we can measure the efficiency gains. So we can do some work now that would take 100, 200 years to do manually, but we can sort of automate these methods, and then we can sort of measure that. But when it comes to the opportunity generation and things, it's a little bit trickier. Yeah.
All right. Kaveh, what about you? Would you have maybe some examples of how much digital transformation has brought to the business, or how do you deal with if the question is thrown like that? Well, what exactly has it brought to the business?
I think to your broader question, first of all, the management team, the executive team are having to make priorities, judgments, and judgment calls every day, every month, every week. And whilst, for example, a digital initiative is a no-brainer for us who are involved in digitalization, for people who are kind of sitting in having to basically think about the broader picture, they have to basically compare an investment in digitization versus an investment in an asset versus an investment in a human capital, an investment in an exploration. So they have to make judgment calls. So I think that any digitization initiative that one does has to basically have, clear value case associated with that, and that you can kind of measure it, and you can kind of also see the value come out of it. And it's very much to the point that James described. But I think that in itself also won't create or sustain the momentum. I think if your question is how do you sustain the momentum of this, to me there's another angle to it. Is once you, with start of any digital transformation, you need executive support, management support, the board support. Yep. To sustain it, you need grassroots pull. You need grassroots pull. If I often do this in wherever I'm speaking. If I could have seen your audience right now, if I ask them, for example, how many of you go and spend your hard-earned cash that you earn basically on the devices that your CIO has told you to buy at home. You're buying your own devices basically. How many of you are doing that? I bet you 0 hands go up. But on the other hand, if I say how many of you have been influenced by your children, by your partners, by your peers, by your friends in buying a device, buying it or adopting an application that you're passionate about, then lots of hands go up. So this concept of grassroots pull is the concept we have to kind of introduce in the organizations. How do we make sure that our users fall in love with our technologies, become so passionate about the technologies that they become effectively the beacons of technologies. They are passionate, they talk about it, they can show it in the day-to-day work. To me, that's the way how you sustain the initiatives. One example that we did very early on was our business intelligence program. This was, so the problem statement was that we couldn't, our management team, our extended leadership team didn't really have a holistic view of all the aspects of our business, whether it's production, whether it's people, whether it's your drilling activities, all the things that you need in a dashboard. Before, you had to basically go to the various departments, ask the request, and reports get prepared for you manually, and it would, by the time it reaches to you, it may be outdated. By putting our business intelligence programs, by putting our data warehouses, by putting our applications that can feed these data warehouses, and putting a series of digital dashboards, that suddenly basically made access to information onto our top leadership team available anywhere, on any device, at any time. They could get basically the information. And more importantly, it didn't take an army of people to prepare your HSSE dashboards or your financial dashboards. All of them are now automated, and that in itself is got two types of benefits associated with this.
Thanks, Kaveh. Now we are 20 minutes to go. Before we open for the questions from the audience, what would be, if you could maybe cite one key learning, either from a failure or from a success, to someone who is listening to us? What would that be? The crucial thing you cannot get it wrong, or you have to get it absolutely right. Back to you, James.
I think it has to be around people and teams and competence. I really think time and time again it comes down to that in terms of what digitalization is and what it isn't. I didn't answer what digitalization isn't, and we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot in our industry by portraying it as robots and drones and and HoloLens glasses, virtual reality. But in reality, it is teams and it's people. It's building up these long-lived teams that can solve business problems. And as I mentioned, the key thing is to allocate some of your best people onto the digital transformation initiatives. Get that enthusiasm and the influence and the ability to pull people together and communicate is a really key attribute for success. So if there's one thing I would choose, it would definitely be this sort of people culture and setting up teams in a good way with strong leadership. Yeah.
Very good. Now, thanks, James. What about you, Kaveh?
I'm afraid I have to be also a repeat of what James says. People, culture, or having a great strategy is good, but it won't get anywhere if you don't have the right people and have the right digital culture behind it. But on the people side, the one addition to this is don't think about your people, just your people that you have in your team. Think about the bigger ecosystem of people that are going to be impacted by those technologies or are able to help you basically bring those technology to fruition. So we got thousands of users in our organizations. To me, every one of them are beacons of innovation, beacons of opportunities, beacons of ideation. That's one element of it. And of course, think about people, your suppliers, those dedicated suppliers that you have as partners, and treat them like their own people also. Trust them basically, because with that you can create win-win situation. There is nobody, doesn't matter how big organization you are, doesn't matter who you are in this world, nobody can deliver the digitalization agenda alone. We all need to partner with trusted partners. So as such, if you're entrusting those partners, then trust them also with your strategy and embracing them.
Can I just step in there and just agree with what you're saying now? I think sometimes you need to be a little bit humble and realize that not one company can do everything themselves. If there's a learning from our journey here, I would say early on, just try and scope up what you should focus on as a company versus what you can collaborate on. And there's so much room for collaboration now. Step up external collaboration. They can really move you forward quicker than you can do if you try and do everything yourself.
Oh, very good. And I think that links well with the many questions that came through the chat bot. The two questions that are similar to the topic you were mentioning about the working with partnerships. One question from Ignacio Felici, that digitization starts from the decisions you want to make, then the information you need to visualize to make those decisions. But at the same time, there's a perception, we say a huge gap between what exploration production says open to do and what they really do in reality. Yeah. And a similar question from Andres Vielma, that the industry can be too slow because data is not integrated, and do you see change to more data sharing, even with third parties, to find more agile, optimal solutions? So why don't you answer this one first, James?
Yeah, data sharing is obviously an important topic. I think we try to be very active in this domain. You can go on to data.equinor.com and you can download the Volva data set that we released. We were quite early on with that one. It's carbon capture storage, Northern Lights well that was drilled recently, so you can get that already. So, and it's not just sort of dead data anymore. It's not Volva production finished, but now these data sets are being used by us actively, and we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do more of it. So for obvious reasons, we can't give away active asset license type data that's going to help us to generate opportunities, because that we could say sort of where we gain advantage is with our data, our people, and our assets. So we try and keep hold of those, but of course anything that should be shared, I think we will see more collaboration in the future.
And on the question from Ignacio, I think phrasing it differently, how much more potential there is in tapping into digital transformation in your point of view? I think his point about there is a big gap between what actually we say we do and in reality what we actually do. So what is, if you had to say from 1 to 5, and 5 being we are optimal, we are doing the best we can, how much more potential we can tap?
I think we're scraping the surface right now. I honestly think we're on a good journey here, but I would put ourselves at 1 or 2 at the moment. I mentioned early on that these 2 types of digital activities, the short-term value, I think we're doing pretty well in this space with the teams and setting them up, but that can be scaled much more, throughout the whole organization and the whole industry, this way of bringing people together and augmenting different disciplines, and this long-term delivery sort of through scalable solutions. We're still not in the cloud. Some of us are working in the cloud, but most of us don't have our applications in the cloud yet. So we're scratching the surface. There's still so far to go, but it's not stopping. This is a train that's running and it's not going to stop. So you need to boost your confidence up to understand it and be part of the journey.
Very good. What about you, Kaveh?
I think that kind of there's 2 points about there, which is, where do you collaborate, where do you compete, and of course on this, there's in any industry, in any company, you have those quandaries. Where are the areas? And I think that we should be focusing around the areas of collaborations, and there's plenty of these. I think we as an industry need to become more efficient, more safer, and more responsible. And I think that particularly in the area of safety, there's so much that we can kind of share basically proactively to make sure that no one has an accident. If someone, if there is an accident, it causes everybody harm. So I think that it's important that no one has an accident. And as such, we have to be very proactive in HSSE agenda. I think there are other areas where maybe we should be even more, like, for example, supply chains. There's opportunities in being much more innovative around how we do supply chains across multiples of organizations, because all of us are having the challenges. And of course, you get the supply chains right, you have less carbon footprint. If you're intelligently designing a supply chain that can deal with multiples of companies. So that's I think I think we have way to go around being getting the right forums to discuss and identify opportunities for collaboration. I think the willingness is there. I think we need to have the forums to start getting these things done. But of course, there are certain areas that it is the data that we have is a competitive edge. So I don't think we should force those conversations. It's not necessary in certain areas. But to the other point, which says actually this industry is slow to move. I'm not quite sure whether we may have been slow at the beginning, but a lot of us are at fast pace. If the technology is right, this is why I think it's important that we get our partners understand really our environments. It's not that we want to avoid risk, but we want to understand people understanding our environments. Take an example of, we all think, for example, connected worker offshore is a great thing. To have basically devices that is, safe, that you can use, is ATEX certified, that you can use on platforms, is very, very important. But there's not a lot of them around. You can wear a lot of wearables basically in not kind of production environments, but you don't have a lot of devices in those areas. So that's why I think we need partners that can think and understand our environments well, and design products and solutions that we can use in those environments. And when they're ready, it can be deployed very quickly.
Very good. I want to change slightly the topic. There are a few questions on COVID from the audience. How was the impact of COVID? Has it actually helped to push transformation, especially on the digital side, and would have been the same without COVID, the momentum? Let's start with you, James.
Yes, a good question. I was just going to comment quickly on one of your points, Kaveh. A really good point about this black box thinking is what you're talking about. You know, especially in terms of safety in the industry, learning from mistakes. So really good point there. But for COVID, I actually think this environment, you know, no one was really using sort of Microsoft Teams and things before March 10th or whatever, when people suddenly went home and started working. I actually think it's reduced the threshold in some regards to collaborate across organizational boundaries and geographical areas. I've stopped talking to some people that I would normally bump into on the corridor, but then I started talking to people across the world that I probably wouldn't have spoken to. So that collaboration has definitely helped. But I think if you talk to our software teams, our developers, they really don't like being at home on virtual environments. It's drummed into our teams, our agile teams, that being co-located, stand-up meetings in person is the best way to really be innovative and start to solve challenges. So they've had problems, but in terms of the overall effect, I'm not sure. I don't think it's been too detrimental to what we've actually delivered, actually.
Thanks, James. What about you, Kaveh?
First of all, my thoughts and my heart goes to all those people that have been impacted with the disease in one way or another. And of course, businesses, all kind of businesses, including ours, have also been impacted also. But from a technology angle, I think it's the importance and reliance on technology has been well understood, and the greater dependency that our organization now has on technology, I think that has made the conversations much better and much faster on other things that we have. I think for many of us who have been in the technology world for a long time, mobility has always been on the cards. It's not something, COVID didn't bring that. So many of our organizations were ready because we did have the mobility agenda, the concepts of you can work from anywhere, any place at any time. Wasn't brought to our digital people there, but we were ready for that. So when the transition came, for many of the organizations, the fact that the transition happens in so many organizations so smoothly because they've been ready for that change. But it wasn't well understood with others in the bigger organization that actually, yes, we do need, there will be times that you can work from home. Now, I think this brings the opportunities to talk about other things around the impact of AI, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality. If you can kind of tie these to the values that organization can get, that may not be very clear. I think people can relate it to say the aha moment. Yes, actually, we didn't think that one day we all be working from home, but the technology was there. What's that equivalent that can you create for the other technologies into the future? Why would you need, for example, remote condition monitoring using AI machine learning? Why is it? That's important. How do you paint that vision picture for the future?
Very good. There's still time for a couple of questions. We have five minutes to go. There are a couple of questions related more to Ignition. It seems that some people here are thinking of starting a digital transformation, and questions around sponsorship, especially at C-suite level. So how did you get them to see the value, or the board to see the value of digital transformation, sustainable value? In practice, if you don't have a board that understands the value of it, is it possible without this precondition? starts with you, Kaveh, this time.
Yeah, I think it's important that you bring your senior team on board basically with what you're trying to do. But I think sometimes you may have to do some things to bring it to life with a solution, with a proof of concept, with a minimum viable product to bring it to life. Maybe the times of you showing PowerPoints, for example, may not get a lot of attention, but if you show a particular solution, it will get you there. But it is important that you have the top support. And I would say the most important thing is it's not for the business to understand your digital technology strategy, but for you to understand the business strategy. I think it's often, for example, the mismatch comes where the technologists come to the board and say, we should be going to AI machine learning. We should be going into, cloud computing. And they will say, what are we doing that for? But I think if you can kind of understand the business aspirations, if the business aspiration is I want to be efficient and I want to be scalable, I want to grow fast, then actually cloud computing could be a linkage to that. So I think it's important that the right conversations are happening with your senior team in their language, not in the technology language.
Very good. Maybe we have time for just one more question. There are many people here in the audience who are external partners. And Kaveh, you mentioned example like capability like supply chains. If you had to give maybe what is your top challenge, or where would you see more value capability that requires external support or challenges in new innovative solutions, what would be the next big topic for you? Let's start with you, James.
I can't look beyond just getting our foundations right still. I think the whole approach to data pipelines and getting data in order, getting your data straight is where I think every company is going to have some of their biggest challenges. And I think that's the place where I see a lot of room for innovation, a lot of room for automation of some typical data engineering, data management tasks. So that's where we're having challenges, at least. And I can't think beyond there. I know there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff on top, but unless you get your data straight on the bottom, you're not going to take advantage of all of that on top.
No, fair enough. Very good. What about you, Kaveh?
I think the entire IT value chain requires continuous, good capabilities, good partners. And I think that the good thing is there's a lot of good partners out there. There are good capabilities out there. My recommendation is the same way, we try to understand the needs of our business, understand and invest in understanding their needs. I think try to understand basically the issues, the challenges, the business needs of organizations like us, and invest in that time. And I think that investment will pay back. I think if you can kind of really, I think the times of transactional type relationships, to me, yeah, there's always a sector for that transactional type things, but for a partnership, you just got to invest in each other's, understanding of capabilities and needs. Back to the basics of this. But then there's plenty of opportunities out there.
Very good. So getting the basics right is the most important, and of course, I think people, and leadership, C-level support, as I mentioned, be very concrete on business needs rather than technology itself. Yeah, I think that's probably key emerging, I think, output from this conversation. Well, it's been a long time. I'd like to thank Kaveh and James for the participation today. Great having heard from you and learned from you as well. And thanks very much for everybody who is logged in, wherever you're in the world. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Keep health, keep safe. And back to you, Charles, or we close the meeting.
Yeah, no, just to reiterate, thank you, Leonardo, Kaveh, and James. That's our last session today, but we will be returning tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And tomorrow's sessions are focused on data. So yes, thank you all for joining, and see you tomorrow, hopefully.
Bye.